Before now, I have been losses. I have been resume guy. And Herb Street keeps saying, hey, it's about who's the best teams at the end. And I'm like, no, Reese got some analytics for us over here.
I'm trying to help you.
I want to see if the committee has the cojones to put Auburn at number one.
That was close.
Because the last 3 weeks.
We worked on this for so long.
I tried my best. The Stones
there we
to
go.
put Auburn number one. They're the best team in the country right now. And Herb Street, I'm coming to join you, big fella. I'm with you now on the 4 best teams.
It's amazing how we flip-flop. Well, we've changed so much in the last few weeks.
Hey, Herb, I'm with you, big fella. I'm coming to join you. The 4 best teams. You can't tell me that Auburn isn't the best team in the country right now.
Joseph, Scott, Galloway, seeing the light. You're seeing the light. That's what, Joey, this is what this is about, is to put in the 4 best teams. And what Auburn's done, people are going to bring up they lost to Clemson in week 2.
Yes, I am.
But what I would say is it's week 2. And if you think Stidham and that offense was the same in week 2 versus the way they played in November, then, and by the way, it doesn't matter. If they win, they're both in. But for me, I think Auburn is, and we'll talk about our rankings in a little bit, but I'm with you. I think how they played, you beat the 2 #1 teams in the last 2 SEC games that they played, then I think they need to be up there. But I do want to go back to what Booger talked about, because the last 2 or 3 days, most of us are just almost like a foregone conclusion. Whoever wins the ACC championship is in. What's a given with Clemson. And I can't wait to see where the committee has Miami to see if we're right in assuming, despite that loss on Friday to Pitt, are they in a position that if they win, they're in? We all think they should be, but I want to see what the committee says.
I don't even know that it'll matter where they are, because if then they beat Clemson, who I expect, and we haven't seen it yet, we'll see it when you do, I expect Clemson to be number 1.
Yep.
They beat number one.
I just told you Auburn is going to be number 1.
I think Clemson will be one tonight.
Clemson beat Auburn, and that has to matter. The losses can't disappear. Auburn's playing better than anybody, as well as anybody.
Is different.
So is Kelly Bryant. Let's get to the rankings. We'll argue about this a little bit later.
We got an hour. We got an hour.
Yeah, we have plenty of time. I know it.
You're racing?
They're better.
It's not just what happens in November. You know, it happens. Season counts too, Joe.
They're better.
Let's take a maybe right now, but it still counts in the rankings the whole season. Take a look at this week's college football playoff rankings, brought to you by AT&T. How about the Fighting Tedfords of Fresno State getting in? They'll play for the Mountain West Championship.
Just played Boise State last weekend. They're going to play them again this upcoming weekend. It's really interesting here looking at Mississippi State at number 23
by a thread.
Because interesting. Even though they lost Nick Fitzgerald, they gave them credit for that loss because they lost their starting quarterback. But that's very big for a team like Alabama, who, as we all know, has a very weak resume.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing, guys. It's important for Alabama fans, if they get into a debate in either or on Sunday, every team that they can garner up in that top 25 is important. Fresno State, kind of a forgotten team in their non-conference. Mississippi State is up there in the top 25. LSU eventually. So that gives them 3 teams up in the top 25.
That's a good point. I still think with them, it's going to be the subjective. Do you think they're just better, or do you not, if they're in position to be considered?
Yeah.
Northwestern's at number 21. Let's continue on with the rankings and see who's ranked 16 through 20. Memphis is going to play UCF again. Got blown out first time they played.
Different team now, though. In a 7-game win streak with Riley Ferguson, the way he's throwing the football right now.
Also, teams do change during a season.
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, and UCF also, by the way, with all the distractions surrounding their head coach, that could be a different outcome in the AAC title game.
It's a different team every week. Nobody's disputing that, but you just don't eliminate everything that's happened. LSU at 17.
No doubt. You see LSU right there, as we talked about Alabama's resume. And if the favorite, Ohio State, wins, this resume thing is going to be real, and LSU at 17 bodes well for Alabama.
Speaking about Ohio State, big that Michigan State is number 16, too. Take a look at where Penn State, where Wisconsin, and where Michigan State are as Ohio State tries to make their claim if they win this weekend.
You see all those 3-loss teams there ahead of Memphis. Memphis with the opportunity to win the American. Let's continue on the rankings, looking at 11 through 15. Now, this might be one of the more interesting ones. UCF, by the way, 11-0. We've mentioned where they played. You know, if we had the old BCS system right now, that UCF would be ranked ahead of Ohio State and Penn State. Just thought you might
I don't
want
know
to know
that.
What do you think about that?
But
Right, exactly.
UCF has an argument to be higher than 14. And I know we're going to say it doesn't matter because they have a chance to play for the AAC championship and then get in the other group of 5 bowl game if they win that
year
game.
6 game,
But still, when you watch UCF and you watch that offense, the way they fly around, they are better than some of those 2- and 3-loss teams ahead of them.
Well, and then also I'm going to talk about Stanford right there. If you're looking at a 2-loss team like USC, what do they have on their plate to eat? Look out, they have Stanford there. Stanford being at number 12 gives USC a little something, maybe an outside chance, Reese.
Speaking of a team that's different now with KJ Costello at quarterback, even with Bryce Love injured, they've been impressive. Guys, they were 21 last week. That was a huge jump after beating Notre Dame.
And I've been beating this drum for a while. If you're going to consider these other teams, you're going to consider if there's a spot available, Ohio State, Alabama. You got to consider USC too. And SC is going to be ranked ahead of TCU because we haven't seen them. Horned Frogs. What would the Horned Frogs do if they win the Big 12?
Well, and you wonder now at 11, are they too far out at 11 right now? If they were to beat Oklahoma, could they make up enough ground to potentially surpass a one-loss Alabama or Ohio State?
But Ohio State wants Oklahoma to win. Different teams need different things.
Yeah.
If Oklahoma loses this game and gets to a situation where they're in a conversation with Ohio State, it would be tough to put Ohio State above Oklahoma.
If you gave Alabama their preference of who could win out of the Big 10 championship game and the Big 12, they take a TCU win. A TCU win helps Alabama more than anyone.
TCU sitting at 11. TCU probably wondering, after what happened to them the first year of the playoff, why couldn't we make the big jump if they can win the rematch with Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game? At number 10.
There they are.
Southern California Trojans. You know, you look at them right now and compare their resume, say, to Ohio State. Strength of record for USC, which means how well you did against your schedule, is a spot ahead of the Buckeyes right now, but they're going to be behind Ohio State.
And
it may change.
Yeah, well, and if TCU beats Oklahoma, you would expect TCU at 11 to jump USC, even if USC beats.
And it comes down to how they win.
Yeah,
this will be a situation where, and we've seen it before, if a team blows out, Ohio State blown out Wisconsin in 2014, jump the Buckeyes in. Somebody gets a blowout, a big-time win, then the committee has something to consider when they go back in the room.
I'm going to get into your wheelhouse, Joe. It's kind of like coming down on the final lap at Homestead, and they're in like 7th or 8th place. It's almost too far, too much for them to make up right now. I don't know if they can go from 10 all the way to
Let me
top
ask you
4.
this. Should it be, though? I understand what you're saying.
Right.
In your judgment, should it be?
No, it shouldn't, because once you look at the final resume, this committee has told us we want to look at the full body of work. When you look at the full final resume, if their resume says that they're one of the 4 best, it shouldn't matter where you are right now.
I think what hurts USC, though, guys, is the way they lost to Notre Dame and Notre Dame's performance here in recent weeks, having lost to Miami and then lost to Stanford. They didn't just lose at Notre Dame. They got blown out pretty badly. I think you have to look at the way teams lose as well.
Which would bring us to Ohio State.
They don't want to hear
whenever
that.
they show up.
That's not what they want to hear right now.
No, they don't.
Who is number 9? Just ahead of the Trojans. That is Penn State. You know, the one thing Penn State has hit on is that they don't have the ugly loss. They don't have the great win either, but they don't have ugly loss.
Yeah, and they shot themselves in the foot against Michigan State. The Ohio State loss, okay, you're in Columbus, that's understandable. The issue came when they lost to Michigan State. They went in for the weather delay, came back out, and didn't look like the same team.
That's a fair point. If we're going to talk about injuries and game changes, and Clemson lost
12 hours to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, and they're on the road.
Well,
different being at home
in studio, we know. Reese is out in the sun having fun.
No, it's like Miami winning at home at noon. Tough to do.
Yeah.
Wow, here we go again with that. Here we go.
You're not buying that?
No, I watched you guys talk about that last week.
Kickoff.
I'm absolutely not buying that.
Jeff.
Not buying it.
Come on, man. Yeah, how many times have you seen that noon window? Heard me tell you that
here we
noon
go.
window is
The dreaded
dangerous.
noon at Hard Rock
All you
Stadium.
guys stay up late the night before, don't get your rest. All right, just ahead of the Nittany Lions, ranked at number 8, is Ohio State. Now, you brought up USC's bad loss, and it's awful. But Ohio State's is worse.
No doubt, 55-24 to Iowa. And it's hard to get that out of your mind, guys.
Buckeyes still sitting there, though. Things could change. They've got undefeated Wisconsin in front of them. The 2014 game that you guys brought up when they absolutely annihilated Wisconsin and made it seem clear from a subjective point of view that the Buckeyes deserved to be in the playoff and went on to win the national championship. Could they do something similar to this Wisconsin
They
team?
could. You are 100% correct. But the Buckeyes being at number 8 gives you a glimpse into the committee soul. They now are telling us, in my opinion, that even though Alabama lost, they still view Alabama as a better team. Just that's in my opinion. I think that's what they're telling us right
They can't add
now.
anything, though.
Alabama correct, they can't. But right now, though, right now they view it that
on
way.
their plate, as you said.
And that's why I think it's important to see, is Alabama going to be here or a spot or two higher? Who's number 7? The U.
Wow.
Miami, after the loss to Pittsburgh, falls
That's
to
a
number
far
7.
drop. I'll say this, though. It was a good thing for Miami last week. They were number 2. Remember, they flip-flopped with Clemson, so that the free fall maybe wasn't as drastic. How about that, though, guys?
That is a ton of respect from week to week. That is a ton of respect.
It is.
To jump Miami over Clemson a week ago, one bad loss, because we've seen teams with bad losses in this season to drop 5 spots, but it still shouldn't matter. They should be able to get in if they beat Clemson.
I still think they're in de facto quarterfinal.
Yep.
The level of competition they have in the ACC, the win over Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame hasn't been the same team since that night in Miami, I think the Hurricanes are fine if they can beat Clemson, which is a pretty tall order. Let's look at the top of the rankings right now and see who the new number 1 team in the country is, and it is the reigning national champion Clemson Tigers back on top. Now, one thing, ordinarily I sit here and say it doesn't matter if you're 1, 2, 3, whatever. When you start looking at where Georgia and Auburn are going to be, if Clemson is 1, it's going to send Clemson to New Orleans and send an SEC team to Pasadena if they're 2-3 instead of 4. That could be the interesting part.
I'll tell you, I think this shows you that win against Auburn looks so good now for the Clemson Tigers. And to me, they passed the eye test weekend. And
well, according to the FBI, Clemson has 9 top 40 wins. They love Clemson's resume, the committee that is.
Yeah, as well they should. Yeah. I think it's the strongest one. I think their defensive front's the most dominant individual unit in football. You don't like that. You
love I was going to say,
best athletes on the field.
A bunch of Booger McFarland's up there.
A bunch of them. Just keep rolling them in. Who's behind Clemson at number 2? The Auburn Tigers, after beating Georgia and Alabama, both of whom are ranked number 1. One of Auburn's 2 losses coming at the hands of Clemson. Now the Tigers at 2.
They almost had the Stones. They came close. But when you talk about front 4, there has not been a better-looking front 4 in these last 3 or 4 weeks than Auburn and what they've been able to do. They held Georgia to 46 yards running
Can they do it again?
football.
Can they do it
shut
again?
down Alabama.
Yep.
Why would you assume they can't?
I'm just saying, they're going to have to do it again.
It didn't look like it was hard the first time.
I'll tell you this, you don't ever say this. Alabama got handled on Saturday. The score was not indicative of how dominant I think Auburn was
so when you say
in that game, and the selection committee is giving them respect for
and the Georgia game, handled. And that's why I say when you look at this Auburn team right now, with the way Stidham is playing right now, in the Clemson game, it looked like he was a freshman. Now he looks like a veteran out there playing. He understands the game, and he understands what his team is bringing to the table.
I think one of the things, when you look at Auburn right now, what about the health of Kerryon Johnson?
Huge.
If they play the way they did the first time, Reese, you or Herbie could play running back, and they'll be okay.
Yeah, it's about that defense stopping Georgia's run game.
Well, you also haven't seen Reese with his outside the tackle speed, which I used to see on Turkey Day Bowl games.
Yes, sir. Yes, I put my foot in the ground.
Don't let him get to the track.
Wow.
At number
Swing
3.
pass monster.
Oklahoma. Hey, think about this. If it were to wind up like this, we've seen Jarrett Stidham against Baker Mayfield before. Jarrett Stidham started the game at Baylor.
But I want to make this point. We're talking a lot about Auburn right now and teams that are peaking and playing their best football. And you talk about who the best 4 teams are. I would argue Oklahoma is peaking right now as well. To me, best offense in the country.
For sure.
Baker Mayfield's the best player in the country. Their defense, we criticized them all year, but I would say
and
their
deservedly
last
so.
3, deservedly so.
Yes.
Their last 3 games, they have gotten better, guys. They're playing with better effort. They showed it against TCU, showed it against West Virginia, albeit Will Greer not in the game. But this is a team, I think, playing its best football of the
And
season.
TCU's defense was able to shut down Oklahoma for a quarter and a half to end that game. It would be interesting. What a terrific matchup. If this stays the way it is, to see that Auburn defense against Baker Mayfield for an entire game would be incredible.
And those 2 teams played in the Sugar Bowl last year, which is where they would play once again. Now, I think this number 4, before we unveil it, this is a little bit interesting, too. If Wisconsin wins, they're going to move up into it, but you might get a hint to what the committee is thinking. Should say Alabama be at number 4 right now.
If Wisconsin's not number 4 right now, I will fall off this chair. Oh, now I've fallen off before.
Please let somebody other than Wisconsin be number 4.
Now let's find out if they have the cloners.
Let's see 4.
The right
it is,
answer.
Wisconsin.
That's the right answer.
It is the right answer, but I'm disappointed Joey didn't fall off the chair.
And, you know, it's amazing. All year long, we've talked about Wisconsin's non-conference schedule. We talked about their schedule not having played anyone. And when it's all said and done, if you're in Wisconsin right now, you have what you want. You beat Ohio State, you're in the playoffs. So all they can do is say, you know what, national media, take this. We have one game against a team the last time we saw them in this spot that beat us 59-0. So I think if you're Wisconsin, you got everything you want right now.
Let's look at 5 and 6, how that stacks up. We'll do these two quickly. Alabama falls from 1 to 5 after the loss to Auburn. That leaves at number 6 after the Crimson Tide Georgia, who has Auburn in the SEC championship game. So they're in good shape.